Good morning, class 11. So, in our last class, which was also a live class, we discussed about the topic family, kinship, and marriage in details from the chapter Understanding Social Institutions. And so, this brings us to discuss section 3 of this chapter, and the title of this section is Work and Economic Life. So, in today's discussion, we will at first begin to understand what work means. Then we will move on to understand about the various kind of changes that have been brought about in the world after industrialization, more particularly in the modern world. And then we will move on to understand about the changing kind of work, the changes that work has seen in this globalized era. So, at the very beginning, let us begin by understanding what is work. So, when you all were children, then you all had some kind of dream, a dream of becoming something, of doing some work in the society, isn't it? But when you talk about work in that time, then you always related it with payment, isn't it? So, whenever we say work, then we always have a tendency to refer it to paid employment. So, work means money. This is what we understand in the modern times about work. But this concept of work is oversimplified, or it is a very narrow meaning of work. So, all the time, work does not only conform to the idea of paid employment. There are many works in the world which are done informally. There are works for which people do not get proper payments. This is known as informal economy. So, the term informal economy refers to transactions outside the sphere of regular employment, sometimes involving the exchange of cash for services provided, but also often involving the direct exchange of goods or things. So, informal economy is a big kind of sector in India itself. Although we have got the formal economy where we have offices where people get salary every month, where there are so many um, compensations given to them, but there are also a sector outside the formal economy which is known as informal economy, where people always do not get regular amount or regular payment or salary for their work that is done. Let me give you an example. See the construction workers in our around your area, if there is any. So the construction workers, when they work, they are not given the same amount of money every time. It changes. And the it's not only regular payment, but also at the same times they do not get incentives like the regular employed people get, isn't it? So this is informal economy. And when we talk about work in the present era, we not only have to take into account the formal economy where there is regular payment done, regular incentives, bonuses, etc., but also we have to take into account the informal economy, which is outside the sphere of regular employment, where payment may be very little, where there might be no incentives, and where people might be working more and paid less. So, this is what is known as formal and informal economy. So, in your book, let us try to discuss about the meaning of work as given here. So, we can define work, whether paid or unpaid, as the carrying out of task requiring the expenditure of mental and physical effort, which has as its objective the production of goods and services that cater to human needs. Look at the definition once again, students. Let us go line by line, word by word. So, first of all, when you try to define work, you have to take into consideration both paid work and unpaid work. So, whether it is a paid work or an unpaid work, but work ultimately defines as the action of carrying out certain tasks, of carrying out certain things which require a lot of mental and physical effort. And the objective of work, be it paid or unpaid, is the production of goods and services. And these goods and services are produced for the benefit of human needs. Let me give you an example of unpaid work. So, your mother, she always cooks in the family, isn't it? So, your mother, when she cooks, she puts all her effort in doing it, so that she can produce some good dishes and she can satisfy your need of hunger, isn't it? But she does not get paid. Isn't it a work? Definitely it is. Also, at the same time, think of an industrial worker. He also has to be in the factory from, for a very long period of time. And when he is in the factory, he has to, you know, sacrifice a lot of physical as well as mental effort. And in that way, he tries to supervise the production of goods and services which are good for the human needs, to satisfy their needs. So, this is work. It can be paid, it can be unpaid, it can be formal, it can be informal, but ultimately, it includes a lot of physical and mental effort. And also, the main objective of a work is the production of goods and services which cater to the needs of the human beings. So, this is work. So, let's come to the next topic of this section, that is modern forms of work and division of labor. So, to know about the modern forms, it's important for us to know about the pre modern form as well. So, in the pre modern forms of society, people mostly worked either in the field or they were mostly busy with their cattles. That means they cared for their livestock. But of course, whatever was there in the pre modern period, that has now changed after the development of industries. So, after industrialization in developed society, only a small portion of people work in the agricultural sector. And nowadays, agriculture itself, farming itself, has also become largely industrialized. So it means that although less amount of people are there in agriculture, but still those people who are in agriculture, they use a lot of techniques, a lot of industrialized things in order to carry out their activities in the field. So this may be machines rather than human or animals which they use for the purpose of farming. So then, apart from the industrialization of agriculture, there is also the expansion of the service sector in India. Service sector means the tertiary sector, where people go to offices, where people work in banks, people work as teachers, as doctors, etc. So apart from people in the agricultural sector who works with the help of certain industrialized things, people in India are also very much involved in the expansion of the tertiary sector or the service sector. Then let's move on to another extensive and distinctive characteristic of economic system of modern society. So in the modern society, with the development of machines, with the development of technologies, there is also the development of complex division of labor. Division of labor means that work is divided into smaller parts so that people who specialize in that part can work. For example, I own a garment factory and mostly I deal with production of shirts. In that case, I will have people who are, who are fit to do certain things, who are specialized to do certain things while making a single shirt itself. For example, I will have a tailor who will be able to measure all the things and then, you know, cut everything accordingly. I will have a designer who will design the shirt. Then I will have another person who will have the shirt washed. Then I will have another person who will specialize in dyeing and coloring the shirt. And then perhaps I'll have another person who will be specialized in ironing the shirt. So, for one small thing, also, there will be division of labor. And this is what exists in a highly complex modern society of today. So, there is proper division of labor, and the work is divided in various numbers so that all the people who are specialized to do that thing, who are trained to do that thing, they can do it in the factory setting. Okay. So, when we talk about the traditional society now, then remember that apart from agriculture, there were some non agricultural work as well. And mostly the non agricultural work consisted of craft making. So, this craft skill was learned through a lengthy period of training. And the workers normally carried out all aspects of production process from beginning to end themselves. There was no specialization. There was not involvement of many people in making one single craft. So this was what was known as, the kind of labor that people used to do in the traditional era. And of course, in the modern complex era, we have more and more division of labor. So when we talk about division of labor, then we talk about specialized task, specialized work, isn't it? So see this paragraph just below activity 8. I have highlighted it for you. People seeking job in factories were trained to perform a specialized task and receive a wage for his work. For example, the managers supervised the work, for their task was to enhance worker productivity and discipline. Again, below him, there were the managers who would manage the entire staff and he would get paid for the manager. Then again, there would be many laborers who would be working. Then there will be unions within the laborers. Then there will be so many other groups of people who are specialized to do different things and they are paid specifically for doing that thing. So one of the main features of modern society is also expansion of economic interdependence. So nowadays we all are dependent from one work to another in order to live. Like, just let me give you an example. So for our own living, for our day to day lives, we are dependent on enormous number of other workers, isn't it? We are dependent on, for example, when we wake up, we are dependent on our mothers who does certain unpaid work for the family. When we move out of the house to go to school, we are dependent on the taxi drivers or we are dependent on the rickshaw pullers who are again under the not unemployed but under the informal sector. Then also when we go to school, we come to a very bureaucratic organization where there is proper hierarchy, there is the principal, there are certain rules which are to be followed, etc. So ultimately all work nowadays in the modern era are interdependent. One work cannot be done well if the others are not cooperated well. So, apart from that, modern society also witnesses a shift in the location of work. Before, in the pre industrial era, people used to work at home collectively. But with the industrial advancement, when machineries were introduced, where electricity and coal operated, in that time, people started coming to the urban areas for work, and there was a sharp distinction between work and home. So these are the various kinds of changes that modern world, or especially we can say the industrialized world, have seen. So now let us very briefly discuss about the transformation of work. So remember one thing, with specialization of work, with proper division of labor, the industrial processes were broken down into operational chains. And these operational chains were there so that work in the industries can be done more precisely, can be timed well, can be organized as well as can be monitored. Okay. So, one of the most significant innovations in the modern factory work was the construction of something known as the moving assembly line. That means one work follows the other. If you see a biscuit factory, for example, you will see that how the various process of biscuit making is also, it goes on line by line through, it's just like an assembly line. Okay, so modern industrial production, in order to maintain this assembly line, they need extensive and expensive equipments, and also at the same time there has to be proper supervisors who would be specialized to monitor the employees, and they can do this through monitoring by themselves or perhaps by certain surveillance system like CCTV cameras, etc. So, also over the last decade, there has been a shift to what is often called as the flexible production and also decentralization of work. So, these are the two terms which have gained a lot of popularity in today's period, especially in the era of globalization. So, to understand about this situation, you need to go through a story. Which is given below. It is just an extract from somebody's, some workers' diary, perhaps. So just go through it once you finish watching the video. And during our next live class, we are definitely going to discuss this again on work so that you can solve all your problems if you have any regarding this topic. So that's all for today, dear students. Please go through the textbook, go through the topics that have been covered today, and that's it. And also, good luck for today's exam. Thank you.